first-time winners, racy rookies, a new 4-time world champion, and one of the craziest driver markets of all time. Formula One had it all in 2024, and here on F1 Beyond the Grid, we spoke to the star-studded cast of a season that's often felt like a Hollywood blockbuster. Hello, I'm Tom Clarkson, and this is the podcast where the fastest drivers in the world slow down for in-depth conversations. And not just drivers, engineers, designers, team bosses, and people with incredible stories all share fascinating tales of their time in the sport. And as we end the podcast's 7th season, I've picked some of my highlights from the past 12 months. You'll hear from Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc, Ollie Bearman, and some of the legends I've spoken to, like Juan Pablo Montoya. But we'll start with the story that sent shockwaves through Formula One. In February, Lewis Hamilton announced that he would be joining Ferrari in 2025, a signing that unites the most decorated driver in Formula One history with the most decorated team. And it ends one of the most successful eras the sport has ever seen. Together, Lewis and Mercedes won 6 Drivers' World titles, 8 Constructors' titles, and 84 races, scoring 153 podiums and 78 poles along the way. In a special episode celebrating Lewis's 12 seasons at the team, Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff reflected on how their relationship has evolved during that time.
It was very nice because we were basically thrown into this project in 2013. Both of us knew. And generally we started to like each other, respect each other. And then after 2016, when we really had time to discuss the year and obviously the outcome, this is the moment where we kind of grew really close together. But like in any relationship, even with your brother, your father, your friend, there is bumps in the road when you disagree on because you have different perceptions or perspectives, but we always overcome that. We always talk, like it's in a really good relationship. There's nothing you drag on that you do not tackle, and that's what we have done. And the last few years, some of my best moments on track and off track were with Lewis.
You talk about that meeting after 2016 when Nico Rosberg won the championship, and that was the meeting in your kitchen in Oxford, is it?
Yeah, exactly. The end of the year was really not good. He was leading the race in Malaysia, had an engine failure, catastrophic, and that would have given him enough points to win the championship. And then we tried to overmanage the situation in Abu Dhabi. The championship was pretty much resolved, and rather than leaving the two out there to race each other, and even if that meant punching into the traffic, we tried to make it super correct, and he was upset about that. At the end, the team won the championship and the driver championship. So we reflected about that in a few weeks later and spent, many, many hours together discussing the situation. And I said to him, listen, do you want to continue with Mercedes? And he said, yes. I said, well, I couldn't imagine anybody else than having you in the car. So if we decide here that this is a mutual wish of ours, we need to sort it out. And I think we left that afternoon with a solid bond that then grew from strength to strength.
When you look at the data on track, is there a moment, is there a lap that stands out where you go, how did he do that?
Qualifying Singapore 2018.
Hamilton crosses the line of 1:36.0. Wow, was that fast? Nobody could beat Lewis Hamilton's time, and Lewis Hamilton for a 4th time and a 4th record-equaling time takes pole here in Singapore.
Lewis, this was the most epic lap I've ever seen around here.
Thank you, man.
Why I remember that is that we finished our relationship with Boss and gave him the opportunity to bring Tommy Hilfiger to the team. So we did that, and then he started his own fashion collection with Tommy, and that was the week leading into the Singapore Grand Prix. And he was traveling basically non-stop. He was in Shanghai for his first catwalk, and then I think he went via the States back to Singapore. And lots of you guys said, well, how can you tolerate that? How can you allow it? A racing driver should be properly prepared. And Nicky was somebody that put people in boxes. And he said, I'm not sure you're doing the right thing here. And then on the top of that, Lewis called me and said, listen, I'm coming late to my briefings on Thursday afternoon because the flight got delayed. And I said to him, listen, you're causing for me here, but that's okay. Our pact, you know it. It's about you deliver and I create a framework that works for you. You're an adult. And then he came and he just destroyed everyone on this qualifying lap in Singapore. And Nicky came straight to me and said, I leave the Lewis management to you. I don't understand. And everybody else never mentioned again about Lewis doing what others perceived as extravagancies and I perceived as his free space.
You talk about Nicky. How important was he in your relationship with Lewis? Was it a triumvirate at the time?
Well, without Nicky, there wouldn't be any Lewis with Mercedes. I think Nicky was so persistent in trying to convince him to join Mercedes. And particularly, he just scored the goal with him on that Sunday night in Singapore where Lewis DNF'd with the McLaren and convinced him to join the team. And so everything else, just followed suit. I'm not sure Nicky was ever given enough credit for that. Took no prisoners. What's the salary you want? And convinced the board of Mercedes to do this. And Nicky was always a very good liaison between the team to Lewis in the first few years because he was talking as a 3-time world champion and had the respect of Lewis. And eventually it became the three of us and the whole team became one. There wasn't, drivers, we sometimes call them contractors. They come, you pay them well. If they don't have the right car anymore and they're getting paid well or somewhere else, they leave. Lewis changed from a contractor to a team member. And that was because everybody else just, embraced the notion of team that we had then.
Look, final one from me, Toto. Is there one anecdote that best sums up your relationship with Lewis Hamilton?
There isn't one. We have been 12 years together and every single aspect of emotion was part of that relationship. We had lots of fun. We had a great day driving historic Mercedes racing cars in the summer, which felt really good. Yeah, maybe the competitiveness. We were both competitive and we went free diving, something that we got George into as well. And we had this world champion that was coaching us. And then Lewis and I started to fall into competition. And it was 20 meters one, the other one 20 and a half, 22 and a half, 23, 26, 27 and a half. And at a certain stage when it was equal at, 27 or 28 meters and it got dark because it was the evening, the pro coach said, I need to stop you guys because one of you is going to get injured. This is getting too competitive. And we had quite a laugh and say, yeah, that's us.
That is you. Look, final one. What makes Lewis Lewis?
Lewis is Lewis. He's one of a kind.
Lewis Hamilton's teammate at Ferrari will be Charles Leclerc. 2024 was arguably his finest year in Formula One, taking sensational wins at Monaco, Monza and Austin, and scoring 13 podiums, the most he's ever recorded in a season. And who can forget his drive from P19 on the grid to P3 in Abu Dhabi just the other weekend? Now Charles is preparing for his biggest challenge yet, beating a 7-time world champion in the same machinery.
I think when a champion like Lewis gets to any team, it brings a lot of motivation out of every single person out of the team. So that will be obviously the first really positive effect it will have on Ferrari. And obviously he will come also along with all the experience that he's had over the years with Mercedes, a different way of working, a different vision. And this is always benefiting a team. And then other than that, obviously for me, it's going to be amazing because I'll have in the same car as me the most successful driver in F1 history, and that will be both extremely interesting for me to learn from one of the best ever, and as well as a really big challenge and motivation to beat Lewis and to show what I'm capable of.
Charles, if you beat Lewis, what will that say about you?
I don't know, and to be honest, I don't even think about that yet. I just try and focus on myself, try to be the best version of me once he get here, because, I obviously try to be the best version of me every time I'm on track, but with Lewis joining the team, he will definitely be a benchmark, so it will be very important for me to be on my top level, and then we'll see how it goes. I'll give my best, he will give his best, and then we'll see, and I can tell you after that, if I make it, how does that feel.
How well do you know him?
Everything is relative, but inside the paddock, it's definitely one of the drivers in which recently, especially, we have spoken the most out of our passions, especially music and fashion. So it was good to exchange about these subjects, especially. Then outside the track, it's not like we have been spending so much time together yet, but that obviously will happen once he joins the team. With all the extra duty we have outside the track, we'll get to know each other even more.
Have you discussed the duet yet?
I told him, but we have very different genre, so it's going to be difficult to do a mix of my music and his music. But why not? Maybe one day. I don't know. I think it will be very difficult to mix our music.
And the great thing is that you can split dog walking duties with Lewis next year, who's got Roscoe.
Exactly. I mean, in Silverstone, we had both of our motorhomes close to each other, and we bumped into each other both walking our dogs. So they already met, and for next year, that'll be nice.
Now, look, how much joy has Leo given you and your girlfriend, Alexandra?
Oh, so much. No, it really changed my life. I've always had pets growing up, but obviously I was still a kid, so it's not like I didn't have the full responsibility of the dog, and it always were my parents that had it, even though I was trying to take care of him or her. But I decided to do that step with Alex. I've always loved dogs in general. I absolutely love it. I mean, it's the best thing in the world. I live for 5 minutes and he's the happiest to see me again. And I don't know, it's just a really, really good feeling.
What's the funniest thing he does?
Oh, I mean, there's something quite funny. I tried to to train him to be clean, but obviously he's still a puppy. He's like 6 months old or something like this. So it's quite tricky at the beginning. So we both pet pee pads.
Pads?
Yeah, like pads you put on the floor for him to pee on it.
Ah, okay.
All right. And so at first he was peeing basically everywhere in the house, and every time I was like, "No, Leo," and I was taking him and putting him on the pee pad to make him understand that's where you need to pee. And now he still pees everywhere in the house, but once he's finished, he goes on the pee pad and he sits down on the pee pad and looks at me like, "You see, I learned from you."
I'm a good boy.
But so that's quite funny because he always and then it's very difficult to get angry because he looks at you with the eyes like, "See, I'm a good boy and I do what you told me," but he didn't get the point yet.
Can we talk teammates? You've been with Carlos now for 4 years. What will you miss about him?
I think just Carlos the person. I think we get on very, very well. Unfortunately, with the world as it is now, everything is over-analyzed, over-criticized. But the reality of things is that we always had a really good relationship. And yes, there's been many moments where inside the helmet, I hated him and he hated me because we didn't view the situation in the same way, but everything was fixed after a discussion between us two. And as I said, we get on very, very well. We share many interests and we had a lot of memorable moments that I'll remember forever.
A lot of Formula One fans will miss seeing Charles and Carlos in the same team. They had intense battles on track and a lot of fun off it. But seeing how Charles and Lewis match up in the same car is a mouth-watering prospect for 2025. An exciting new chapter awaits Sainz as well. His first half of 2024 was dominated by speculation about where he'd drive next. He was linked to Mercedes, Red Bull, Sauber and Alpine, and he eventually confirmed Williams as his next destination. I sat down with Carlos ahead of his final race with Ferrari to look back on a year that started with him losing his seat and his appendix.
The 7 days after the appendectomy, I was 7 straight days in bed and I couldn't brace, I couldn't use my core. Every time I sneezed or every time I coughed, I was crying on pain because they open your abdominal muscles and that every time you contract them, it really, really hurts. So for 7 days, apart from going to a hyperbaric chamber and receiving some massage, I wasn't moving from my bed. Day 8 or day 9, I had to catch a flight to Australia. but I still hadn't moved from bed. So I was catching a flight to Australia. Like, I remember leaving home still on pain and telling my mom, well, here I go. I'm going all the way to Australia without even knowing if I'm going to be racing. And then I tell her something like, imagine if I win, if I go and then I end up winning. And we had a laugh about it, like, well, let's try and race first and then see if you can actually win it. And my mom was reminding me that after the win, that I left home saying, imagine if I actually win. Since then, I actually realized how life can change so quickly. You go from not even knowing if you're going to race in Australia, catching a flight, to suddenly 6 days later winning in Australia. And I remember that was one of the most powerful feeling moments in my life.
I wonder if you found an inner confidence that weekend. Hear me out, because I felt Melbourne summed up 2024 for you. It was the moment that you became this unstoppable force.
I think it's a good point. I think for sure life tests you. And I think at the beginning of the year of 2024, I was tested more than I've ever been tested before. And life put me in a situation that was not comfortable at all. I was told I think it was the end of January, beginning of February, that I was not going to continue with a team that I was 99% sure I was going to continue going into that winter. It was a massive shock to my hopes and to my whole system, and I obviously didn't enjoy that moment. I still trained and I still prepared for that season, targeting obviously to be ready to win races, to win a championship if the opportunity presented itself. And I went into that year still full of energy, but obviously with this uncomfortable situation and an uncomfortable moment, I think I said it on the radio in Australia, Life is such a roller coaster. I remember being very emotional on that Australia Grand Prix podium because there was my dad there was obviously my manager, my girlfriend, everyone who's been next to me. I was obviously thinking about my mom, and they've all seen me suffer during the winter. And when I say suffer, I don't mean I was crying behind closed doors, but I was actually hurt. I was hurt because I didn't expect it. I wasn't prepared for that kind of news, and I was a bit in a shock for a while, and then I regrouped and got training again. But yeah, I remember after that win in Australia thinking about how lucky I am to have the people that I have around me supporting me and giving me that inner strength, to overcome what it was at the time, a tough moment that now when I look back at it, I'm almost like happy, proud that it happened because it made me a much better driver and a much better athlete in general.
Right, let's throw it forward now. Is everything after Ferrari going to feel a bit of a step down?
No, 100% no. I still be a Formula One driver, enjoying my life. You need to remember that what I enjoy is putting on a helmet and driving a Formula One car. Doesn't matter the color. For sure, I'll miss the podiums. I'll miss the celebrations. I'll miss being on a headline because I've won or because I've been on a pole. But my target is to get back to there. I'm not going to Williams just to extract the maximum out of the car. I'm going to Williams to try and bring Williams back to the possibility of fighting for those podiums. And I'm just looking forward to it. A lot more than what people back at home might be thinking. Like, I am so happy and so motivated about that possibility and about that possibility happen that I don't think people can imagine how actually excited I am about it.
In the short term, there's no doubt that Carlos will have his work cut out at Williams. But the team is rebuilding and Carlos can only speed up that process with them. And as for Lewis at Ferrari, I cannot wait to see him dressed in red in Melbourne. He proved as recently as Las Vegas and Abu Dhabi that he's still capable of incredible feats when the car is to his liking. And remember, you can find the full versions of all of these interviews on the F1 Beyond the Grid podcast feed and the F1 YouTube channel. This episode is sponsored by Vanta. Whether you're building or scaling your security program for your company, demonstrating top-notch security practices and establishing trust with your customers is more important than ever. And that's where Vanta steps in. Vanta automates compliance for major global security frameworks like ISO 27001, SOC 2, and European regulations like the EU AI Act, DORA, and NIS 2. The result? You save time, you cut costs, and you make it clear to your customers that you take security seriously. It's no wonder that more than 8,000 companies, including Synthesia, Flow Health and Cora, use Vanta to manage risk and prove their security in real time. And right now you can get $1,000 off Vanta. Just go to vanta.com/grid. That's VANTA.com/grid for $1,000 off. As well as today's Formula One stars, I've also caught up with some of the most iconic names from previous eras in our F1 Beyond the Grid Legends episodes. Colombian Juan Pablo Montoya is a certified cult hero. Outspoken off-track and fiercely competitive on it, he's always been passionate about Formula One. His rivalry with Michael Schumacher in the early noughties had fans around the world glued to their televisions. And Juan says the relationships between drivers was very different back then compared to now.
So nowadays, with social media and everything, the teammates are best friends and they go for dinner together and they all go play paddle together. In my time, you didn't talk to anybody. You know, I used to talk to Fernando and still do, and Rubens and Massa sometimes, and that was it.
So the paddock was a more hostile environment.
It was very hostile. It was you didn't talk to anybody. And honestly, from my IndyCar days and even from back there, I think Ganassi had probably one of the best lines ever. It said, I was nice to somebody, a driver somewhere, and I wasn't cutthroat when I raced him. And he got pissed at me. I said, if you want friends, bring them. You're not here to make friends. And I'm
That's
like,
a good line. Yeah.
And it's true. Nowadays, with the social media, everybody talks, everybody's nice and everything. But when you're that nice, it's hard to be an asshole. And it's hard to pull a move where you're going to drive the other guy off the track when you like the guy.
Do you know, when the visor comes down, does that not blank everything else out?
Yeah, but if it's the guy you had dinner with last night, it's a lot harder to go and throw the car. And, I mean, you're going to race him hard, but you might, you know what I mean? It's not as cutthroat. But nowadays, the rules are a little more that you can be that extreme, where in my time, you could just drive him off a friggin' racetrack.
Well, look, that leads me on to my next topic, which is Michael Schumacher. Did you treat him differently on the track? Tell us now, because I've got a list in front of me of some of the incidents you guys had. I'm thinking in the tunnel in Monaco 2004, Imola 2004 at Tosa.
And look at Montoya, he's really attacking Michael Schumacher as they go down towards Villeneuve. He wants through, no he can't get through.
Schumacher and Montoya too busy watching each other. Schumacher pushes Montoya clean off the road.
What an explosive start to the Grand Prix, incredible side-by-side action, the two. Williams is there on the grass, but Schumacher and Montoya, that was incredible going through the Tosa corner.
You know, you gotta either be blind or stupid to not see me, but you know, it's racing.
I think you were trying to go around the outside, and you said afterwards he's either blind.
Well,
what did you say? He's blind or stupid?
Yeah, blind, stupid. And so the Tosa one is they were quicker than us, but we were really quick on fresh tires. Our tires, when they were new, they were really good. So if I had to pass him, I had to go straight away. And I got there, and honestly, I was okay. He drove me off the track, and I would have done the same thing. Like, I was okay with it. I tried. Like, on my side, I'm going to try. But he drove me off the track, so I'm going to, you know what I mean? And if he would have done in the interview and they asked him what happened, I said, I just drove him over the track. I would have been okay with it. But he said, I just didn't see him. You know what I mean? He played right into it.
And you were sat ready to
No,
bark at it.
I'm just, like everybody thinks and talks, I talked and think. And I end up surprising myself as much as everybody around me.
But back to my original question. Were you harder on Michael than you were other drivers because he was Michael Schumacher?
No, the annoying thing with Michael is nobody raced him. When Michael was coming from the back, it's like, oh, Michael's coming. Everybody would get out of the way from him. That me off. Because it's like, why you know what I mean? It's like, oh, it's Michael. Don't with Michael.
Do you think it was that, or do you think it was the fact he was in a Ferrari that was so much quicker?
No, but everybody has so much respect.
So he's got them beat before he even puts his helmet on.
Yes. And kind of my approach with racing was, I was such an asshole racing, and people thought I was so crazy that it worked. Because when I throw the car in, they knew I was going and I wasn't going to get out of the way. So you had two choices. You either give me room or we crash.
So with all of these incidents, Juan, you say you didn't talk to other drivers. When you've had an incident with Michael, whether it's a race-ending incident or an overtake, would you discuss it?
No. The only time I talked to Michael, I was racing for BMW, and he was still a Ferrari, and Norbert Haag invited us to a party in Nürburgring after the race. And I said yes, because we were staying there for the night. I went there because Norbert invited me, and it was Michael and Rubens, and the three of us got drunk, and that was it.
JPM must have loved the beef between Max Verstappen and George Russell in Abu Dhabi this year. Another multiple Grand Prix winner who never won a world title is David Coulthard. With 13 wins, 62 podiums and 12 pole positions, DC clearly had the talent. He also had the car because teammate Mika Häkkinen won 2 world titles in the same McLaren. So why did he miss out? It certainly wasn't through lack of effort.
I tried everything. Sports psychology, I was wired to be able to understand the brain waves, the frequency of my brain in certain moments. So you'd be reliving certain moments through visualization. And, you know, there's various brain waves and frequencies. And the more receptive wave for taking in information is the alpha wave. And, you know, I could do it now. I can tap my leg, and that triggers, because through training, putting my brain frequency into the alpha frequency. I tried everything because it mattered so much. I dreamt, but in a daydream rather than a night dream, of what it must be like to compete at the highest level in Formula One. I never truly believed it could be possible because I grew up in a small village. It was a farming region. Why and how could that happen? I continued to want to explore and exploit every opportunity to be the best I could, physically, mentally. You know, I think I was an athlete when I was at the peak of my career. That's how I trained. That's how I kept improving. And in the end, the exceptionals, they can make themselves more rounded, more consistent. I just don't think they can make themselves more exceptional. They just are. They just are what nature has created. And in the same way that of course, you've got to apply work ethic to the physicality and the training, and some push on through and absolutely tap into every exceptional gene in their body, and others just can't quite harness the mental stability. I think it's as simple as that for me. I just don't think there is a secret formula. There's definitely work ethic, no question about it, to be the best that you can be. But I just don't think you can be better than nature intended. And that's why when I retired at the end of 2008, it was with no regret, because I tried everything, Tom. What you saw in my career was as good as it was going to get.
Well, you now have so much experience in Formula One. If you'd known back then what you know now, would you have been a better driver?
What I lacked at the beginning of my career, which is the one thing that I think could have made me a better career, not necessarily a better driver, I was just a village boy. I was so naive when I arrived in Formula One. I had no clue. I had no grounding. I'd never been to a Grand Prix until I was in a support race in Opel Lotus in 1990. I'd only ever watched it on television. It was another world. You know, my 15-year-old son, he's racing karts. He'd like to be a racing driver, as many of my ex-colleagues have sons racing now. And they don't know what it is not to be at a Grand Prix and to be in all the environments. So when I first came to the paddock, I would have been 19 or 20, I was like, am I allowed to walk? Do I have to, you know, what are the rules and regulations? And it was a little bit like that when I got into my Grand Prix career. Very naive. So I think as a man, I started to kind of figure out where I fitted in, not until I was in my late 20s. By 30, I was in physical condition that made me feel like I was equal of anyone out there on track. Whether I was physically fitter or not than the others, who knows? But I was in pretty good shape. And all of that started to give me a confidence. And it led to, I think, some of the strongest years of my career.
You're living it all again through your son, Dayton. If there's one piece of advice you can give him as he embarks on his car racing career, what is it?
Make your bed and unpack your bag when you get to a hotel. It's as simple as that. I think that everything matters. Everything matters. And I just don't suspect if you went to Lewis's bedroom, it would be messy, or Max's. I just don't believe it. I think these guys are so regimented in their approach. They just don't leave things to chance.
DC and Montoya are both Formula One legends. We also had Martin Brundle and Rubens Barrichello on the show this year. And let me know which legends you'd like to hear from in 2025 using the hashtag F1BeyondTheGrid or by leaving us a comment or a review. 2024 marked 30 years since the death of Ayrton Senna at Imola in May 1994. Formula One paid beautiful tributes to celebrate the three-time world champion's legacy, including Lewis Hamilton driving Senna's iconic 1990 title-winning McLaren before the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Ahead of the anniversary on May the 1st, I spoke to Ayrton's nephew Bruno Senna, who shared some wonderful stories about growing up with his uncle in Brazil.
I think my best memories from him are when he was back at home. You know, it was his time when he was not like in his shell. He was like completely open and with the family, and we were having a good time. He was just like a big kid, to be honest. You know, he just wanted to have fun, play around, make jokes, pull pranks on everybody, playing with go-karts in the farm. That didn't happen as often as I would like to, because of course he was not home as much as we would like. But whenever he was here in Brazil for the end of the year, we were always having a good time. He wanted to teach things by experience. He didn't want to be like a lecturer. He wanted to be someone who sort of like made you experience something, and then you'd go and have your own understanding of it, and then he would sort of try and improve on it. This is what he did to me in so many ways, like go-karting, engines, mechanical stuff, jet ski, anything that he was playing with us with. He was always trying to teach us in a way, and it was so much fun.
He once said in an interview, "If you think I'm fast, you should see my nephew."
No pressure, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But can you remember how you felt, first of all, when you heard that for the first time?
Well, I think when I heard that the first time, I was actually starting my racing career. I don't think that's exactly what I needed to hear at that point, because the pressure was already pretty high. But, it gave me so much encouragement that someone like him would think that I was, obviously very quick. And I remember when I was a kid and we were playing go-karts together, I could match his lap times and we could play around together when we were like driving the 125cc go-karts. Obviously, I had lots of lead on my go-kart and the pedals were like all the way back and everything. So it was a bit different. But it was, at that point, it was just fun and I was having a good time. And once it became serious work, obviously the pressure was on. And that quote gave me some encouragement, but it was also a lot of pressure.
You were very young, single digits at the time. Were you taken aback by the way people reacted to him? Not just people in Formula One, but the Brazilian fans. Can you remember that?
The thing that sort of put it in perspective to me, really, was when he won Interlagos in 1991.
Yes, Ayrton Senna achieves his ambition to win the Brazilian Grand Prix. Senna has won. Vencedor, winner. Ayrton Senna in Brazil. This is what he's been working for all his career, and he's now achieved it.
That's when I really sort of like understood just how big he was, because he won the race there and we could see it on TV, but if you don't have like the experience in person, it's so hard to understand it. And after he won the race, when he came back home, he was tired. He was like inside the house and trying to recover, and we were all together with him. He was super happy, but he was so tired. And there was maybe 5,000 people outside of the door of the house, just on the street, partying. There was like a massive party there. The whole street was taken by people. As tired as he was, he came over, he like got on the wall of the house, and then he was like there celebrating with all these people. That's what sort of put things into perspective in a way. And even at that age, I was only like 7 years old. Still, I was like, wow, this is something absolutely amazing.
You raced with him at the farm on the kart track there. Did you ever discuss becoming a racing driver with him?
To be fair with you, it was quite interesting, because I think being a kid, I had like my hero right there with me, right? Which is something that's so rare, I guess. I don't know if it's something that people can say. So I had this amazing thing where my reference, the person that I wanted to be like, was there and he was teaching me. At that time, I thought, I just want to do the same as he was doing. All I wanted to do is like be like that guy. Yeah, it was a weird thing, because it was very special. you know, but it was also like this motivation for me to go and be like him. And you know, a lot of what I learned was also from my grandfather, because he was there all the time, and he was the one who sort of like put Ayrton in the go-karts. But whenever Ayrton was there, it was like this guy that I want to be like, or, you know, be better than. You know, as a kid, you have like your dreams. Whenever we were on the track, the clocks came out, we were pretty close, so it was amazing.
So, 30 years ago, Imola, 1st of May, how difficult was that for you, 10-year-old Bruno, to process?
You don't really absorb it immediately. It takes like a long time for you to understand, or at least for me anyway, that he was not there anymore. In some way, he was still there because there was so much going on about him and so on that, and because he was not at home all the time, like you miss him being there less because, you know, he was not home all the time. But, you know, with time, you sort of like understood how things change and how life changed in general from, you know, from a family perspective. I mean, immediately for me, racing was off the cards because my grandfather, who was the one who took me go-karting, he said, no more, this is done. Sort of like it took a bit of time for it to sort of like really sink in. And it was hard. I mean, he was still inspiring me every day, but he was just not doing it actively. He was doing it on a deep core memory level, and I think that's what he's been doing with people for the past 30 years. And how unbelievable is that, to be honest?
Our next sponsor is Select Quote. Split-second decisions, perfect precision. In Formula One, every move matters, because victory isn't just about speed, it's about strategy, teamwork, and flawless execution. Protecting your financial legacy, it's no different. It takes a smart strategy and the right team to stay ahead. And that's where Select Quote's licensed insurance agents can help. Think of them as your personal pit crew. Experts dedicated to finding the right life insurance policy that's affordable, customized, and built to protect your legacy, no matter what life throws at you. Unlike most life insurance brokers who push one-size-fits-all plans that cost more and cover less, Select Quote works for you. Their agents compare policies from top carriers to craft coverage that fits your unique needs. And they can do it in as little as 15 minutes. Have a pre-existing condition? No problem. Select Quote partners with carriers that cover everything from high blood pressure to diabetes to heart disease. And if you're in good health, you could even get same-day coverage with no medical exam required. Select Quote. They shop, you save. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/beyondthegrid. Go to selectquote.com/beyondthegrid today to get started. That's selectquote.com/beyondthegrid. Now to a modern-day Formula One legend who cemented his legacy as one of the greatest racers the sport has ever seen by reaching a monumental milestone in 2024. In Mexico, Fernando Alonso became the first driver in Formula One history to compete in 400 Grand Prix. But in a special show to celebrate his achievement, the two-time world champion revealed that his F1 career could have ended a long time ago.
When I won the championship in 2006 and then I joined McLaren, I had a 3-year contract, 2007, 8 and 9. And I was 99% sure that 2009 will be my last Formula One season. That was my plan, very clear plan in my head. You know, I won the championship in 2005, won the championship in 6, joined McLaren for 3 years, and that was my last contract in my head.
Why?
Also,
what were you going to do?
I don't know. Maybe it was no reason for it, but when I signed that contract, and it was also a 3-year contract, so in my head at that time it was like a long-term contract, and okay, 3 years will feel maybe long, but you know, this is the last anyway. You know, I've already fulfilled my dream. You know, I won the championship 2 times. You know, this is beyond my wildest imagination, you know, to be a Formula One champion. So what else can I do here? You know, so I signed this contract with McLaren, hope to win more championships, hope to win more races. But after Formula One, there are a different life outside, you know, and even not so much about motor racing. I was thinking, you know, I will have my family, I will do normal things, normal days. So I don't think that the 19-year-old Minardi, 2001 Fernando, will think something strange about the 400 Grand Prix, because I was not thinking too much in the future. But at 2007, for sure this will be a surprise.
I did want to ask you about the opportunity to go to Red Bull for that season in 2009. Adrian Newey designed a good car. They'd won their first race with Mark and Sebastian. How were you feeling about maybe that being a missed opportunity and, of course, the opportunity that Ferrari gave you?
I didn't thought too much about that, never, not those years and not even now. And I never regret anything. I know that some decisions in your Formula One career can change a lot, what you achieve, what you cannot achieve. But I think when you take a decision, you take it, fully committed to that and thinking that is the best decision. So no one has a crystal ball to know what is going to happen in the future. 2008, I think I had few moments that I well known that I could join Red Bull. One was when I left McLaren at the end of 2007. After that season in McLaren, I find different possibilities. I met Adrian, Christian in Heathrow Airport for a meeting.
Secret meeting.
Yeah, and then in 2008 was the closest. And we were in Spa. I remember perfectly. We were in a car park in Spa Airport, the little airport on top of the hill. We were in that car park, sitting in the back seats, both of us at night, talking about the possibility. And I was very close to Ferrari. If it was not in 2009, will be for sure in 2010. And yeah, we went into that road, and they took Sebastian, that he was in BMW at that time, doing some Fridays and some test driving in BMW. So yeah, that was
an amazing story.
Yeah.
Why didn't it happen back then? Because you seem so happy about Adrian joining Aston Martin now. Why didn't it feel right back then?
Again, it's easy to say now, but back in 2008, Red Bull had I think one podium of David in Monaco. Red Bull was an energy drink company. Great team, great members in the team, and but I think to predict that they will win 7 or 8 championships in the next decade, it was not totally guaranteed, and it's when Lewis changed it from McLaren to Mercedes, that first year in 2013 was a lot of critics, because why you change McLaren, for a Mercedes that it was only achieving 1 or 2 podiums until then, and now he's a 7-time world champion. And now the same with the Ferrari. You don't know what Lewis will achieve next year. If Ferrari does well and win a championship, it's a great move. If Mercedes does well, and they win a championship, it's a bad move. How you can predict that?
It's been such a fascinating career for you so far. And I did want to ask, what has been your best race since the comeback? It's very clear to me as an observer, but I'd love to know what you think.
I would say Monaco 2023 or Zandvoort. You would say Brazil?
Wow, I was going to say Brazil, but Zandvoort was mega as well. Why Monaco?
Because I think we started the season in 23 and we saw our car strengths were the slow speed corners, traction, braking. So since Bahrain or Jeddah, I said to the team, don't touch the car too much until Monaco. Whatever upgrades are coming, let's try to wait for after Monaco. I don't want to change the characteristics and the DNA of this car until we race in Monaco. The first upgrade was anyway programmed for Canada, which was after Monaco, so that was not a risk. But slowly through the first couple of races, we were losing that good character of the car and that strength. We went to Miami, and our weakest sector was the slow speed sector. We went to Barcelona, our worst sector was the slow speed sector. So for whatever reason, it banished a little bit the good things about the car that we saw in the first races. So we came to Monaco, and I was so focused about that race that I wanted to win that race. I wanted to win that race. The Red Bull was perfect machine, but Monaco is unique. So my biggest hope was to win Monaco. So since, I think, Wednesday, the Monaco preparation for me was the biggest and most precise preparation I ever did in a weekend. So every bump of the circuit, every data from 2022 that Aston had, 2021, watching races from the past, different things. It was a lot of detail going into that race. And in fact, I don't think that the car was great. And we put the car 20 milliseconds from pole position, thanks to an incredible last sector of Max. And then in the race, again, we were not great. I think when it started the rain, we were 23 seconds behind Max. So I was losing a lot of ground. We were not fast enough. But again, we were close to win it if we maybe change for another intermediate tires instead of medium or whatever. So I think that was a lot of hard work to put close to a race win. So I say Monaco because I like that level of preparation and that level of performance, even when the car was not maybe at that level.
Was that the most prep you'd put into one race in your career?
I think so.
Well, the Fernando Alonso I'm sitting opposite seems more energized, enthusiastic. Are you going to prolong your career now that you've got Adrian? And
I don't want to stress too much about that. I will lie if I tell you that I didn't think about it. Obviously, I will race 25, 26. And then in 26, I think I will see how I feel, how motivated I am, and I will discuss it for sure with Lawrence and with Adrian eventually, what will be the best for the team. I have a long-term commitment with Aston. I will be working for Aston for many years, behind the wheel or in a different position. We enter in this personal adventure of working with a talent like Adrian. I want to experience that behind the wheel, yes, but I'm not too scared of working alongside somehow and seeing Aston winning even if I'm not behind the wheel. Because I will feel when I'm not ready to give something extra behind the wheel to the team, and maybe someone else can do a better job. And I will be very honest on that, and I will not be disconnected to the team, so I will feel if we win eventually, when I'm not driving, I will enjoy it a little bit as well.
Fernando wasn't the only legend at Aston Martin to reach a special landmark this year. In Las Vegas, Aston Martin sporting director Andy Stevenson worked his 600th Grand Prix. That's more than half the races in the history of the sport. Remarkably, all of his races have been with the same team, which started as Eddie Jordan Racing in the junior formulas during the 1980s. After Richard Bosco Quinn gave Andy a job as a mechanic there, he had to work very hard to impress the big boss, Eddie Jordan.
Got to work nice and early. The factory office was still locked up, so I just sat outside in my car. And to Eddie's credit, and he always did it all the way through the time that he owned the company, he was one of the first there. So Eddie arrives, unlocking the office door, and I walk up to the office door. He turns around, "What do you want?" I said, "Oh, I'm starting work for you today. My name's Andy Stevenson, pleased to meet you." "I told you I don't like you. I don't want you to work for me. Go home." So you think, oh, great. I've just left my other job.
What happened next?
I had to sit in my car. So I sat in my car until Bosco arrived, and Bosco said, ignore him. And he put me on a few projects. And then Eddie turns up in the workshop. "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, you have to speak to Bosco." He said, "I own the company." I was really enjoying the job. You know, I'm working for the current Formula 3 champions, and I'm working away on a race car doing some modifications to some electronic control units that control the engines. And Eddie comes in, what are you doing? And I say, "Look, I'm converting these boxes for you." "Oh," he says, "so you're pretty talented then?" I said, "Well, you know, I can hold my own." He said, "Oh, it's 10 o'clock at night." He said, "You all start like that. Guaranteed in 3 weeks' time you'll be gone." To which I'm thinking, right, I'll show Eddie. I'll show him how good I am. Or how
Wanting
good
to
I can
prove
be.
him wrong.
Wanted to prove him wrong. It took me about 20 years to realise all Eddie was doing was motivating me to get the most out of me possible. So he was always challenging people. How much do you want this job? How much do you want to be here? How much do you want to win?
Well, 99. Thus far, it's the team's best finish in the World Championship. You finished third. You have Heinz-Harald Frentzen join the team. Can we start by talking about Heinz? He's been on the podcast, and he came across as incredibly technical, incredibly analytical. But how quick was he?
He was so fast, and over one lap, almost untouchable. And he'd shown us that in Formula 3000 as well. So fast, so committed, so brave. His problem was in the race that his mind could sometimes wander because of his curiosities. And he would do random things like push buttons in the car just to see what it would do, which we're always having to tell him off for. It was.
Andy, are you serious about that? Because now I'm now thinking of, was it Nürburgring? He's exiting the pits and just grinds to a halt. Is that because hadn't he pressed the wrong button?
That wasn't one of his experiments, but he'd done some other stuff. So Nürburgring was really, really interesting. In qualifying back then, you just had the hour and you went out and set your fastest lap, and everybody involved. You had qualifying engines and everything, so it was quite an exciting time. The weather was a bit shaky, and it was a damp track. The team manager had said, let's get Heinz in the car and let's get him out, put a banker lap in. And Heinz is sitting in the car. No, not going out. No, we want you to go out, put a banker lap in. No, not doing it. Yeah, but yellow flags, red flags, let's get a banker lap in. Heinz just then gets out of the car, disappears. So we're in the garage, qualifying's running, everyone's going round, setting lap times, we've done nothing. We're sitting in the garage. And we go and find his manager. I said, look, you've got to get him back. We're qualifying. We've got to put him in the car. His manager comes back. I can't find him. I'm thinking, well, this is a disaster. We've got a great car, no driver. He comes back with 10 minutes to go, doesn't talk to anybody, gets in the car, looks at me, we ready? I said, yeah, let's go. Goes out, puts it on pole.
What? I've never heard that story before.
It was the most bizarre thing ever. But when Heinz is around, a lot of bizarre things happen. He's a very, very special character, very unique. You don't meet many like him. Not many people know this, and I can probably say it now, but in Manicourt, we'd been in Canada the week before, 2 weeks before, and he'd had a big accident. He had rear brake failure, big accident, and actually knocked himself about quite a bit. And he turned up to Manicourt and he had to pass the fitness tests, which he did. And then he come back to me in the garage. He said, don't tell anybody, but I've got a broken leg. And I said, what? He said, yeah. He said, I've had to have a bunch of painkillers to pass the medical, but I've got a broken leg. So we had to sort of make him comfortable in the car. And the race he won, he had a broken leg.
Oh, my God. So,
it wasn't like in two pieces sort of hanging off, but yeah, he was in a lot of pain. And you might think, he's telling a bit of a story or whatever. But after the race, he said, let's go party. So we jumped in his little private jet and we flew off to Monaco. We're in the nightclub, and all night he had to dance with one leg. The other leg was in the air. He couldn't put any weight on it at all.
This episode is sponsored by Unbound Merino. Are you tired of wasting time trying to figure out how best to pack for your travels? Unbound Merino is a travel clothing brand made by travellers for travellers. And they're all about helping you pack lighter, smarter, and stress-free. So obviously, I'm delighted to be partnering with them, as I could always do with some help in that department. But what's their secret? Merino wool. It's temperature regulating, moisture wicking, and ridiculously comfortable. And here's the best part. You can wear their clothes for weeks without needing a wash. That means fewer outfits in your bag, less laundry, and zero headaches. I just ordered a few of their pieces online, and I can't wait for them to arrive. I just know these clothes are going to be staples in my suitcase for the 2025 season. Unbound offers timeless, versatile clothing that will have you looking great in any situation. You can go from the plane to an outdoor adventure to evening dinner all in the same outfit. No overpacking, no outfit changes, just grab your bag and go. Plus, packing lighter means saving on baggage fees, spending less time wrestling with your suitcase, and more time making memories. If you're ready to make packing easier, head over to their website, unboundmerino.com, where new customers can use our code GRID for 10% off their order. That's unboundmerino.com. Get 10% off. While Fernando and Andy surpassed 1,000 races between them, some of the sport's future stars were racing in Formula One for the very first time. Ollie Bearman, Franco Colapinto and Jack Doohan all made their debuts in 2024. Bearman's was probably the most dramatic, stepping in for Carlos Sainz at very short notice in Saudi Arabia to become Formula One's third youngest debutant. Ollie stole the show by scoring his first championship points with P7, before becoming a super sub again with Haas in Baku and Sao Paulo. Those performances have been rewarded with a full-time seat at Haas in 2025, and he told me in fascinating detail what it was like to be thrown in at the deep end in Jeddah when he was preparing to race in Formula 2.
Friday morning, I was getting ready to start 10th in the sprint race because it's a reverse grid. I was sitting down for lunch when the call came.
Only at lunchtime?
Yeah, but and the race...
Of course, it's
all delayed,
race.
But it was still late notice. And the second the name came up, I knew what was going to be said.
It was Fred? Was the name Fred?
Exactly.
Can you remember what he said? What were the words?
Well, first of all, he called my manager, but my manager ran out of credit on his phone or something. So he
couldn't take the call.
I almost missed the race because my manager didn't top up his minute. But then I called Fred back, because I had enough data, thank God. And he told me the news. He told me that I would be racing for Ferrari this weekend. And I think he understood pretty quickly that I was getting really nervous from the way I was speaking to him. He was like, Ollie, calm down. It's going to be okay. I remember telling him that I'll be at the track in 10 minutes, Fred. And my hotel was half an hour away from the track. But I didn't want to miss it, I wanted to get there and make sure I could do it. So those 3 hours between getting the call and jumping in the car for FP3 went by like this.
To make your debut with Ferrari is a huge opportunity. Were you even aware of the pressure? Did you have time to think of pressure and how people might judge you that weekend?
I knew that it was going to be the most important weekend of my life. And actually, just before getting in the car for the race, my manager, he didn't tell me good luck. He didn't say, have fun. He was like, these next 2 hours are the most important 2 hours of your life. And I was like, thanks a lot.
Thanks for that.
I did not need you to tell me that. I knew that already. So, no, I knew it was a lot of pressure. The eyes were on me as much as everyone was saying, don't worry, there's no pressure. There's, of course, pressure. Whenever you get in an F1 car, the pressure is high, especially in the circumstances. And I remember that I felt really comfortable with the car pretty early on in FP3. So I felt confident and comfortable with it. I was happy to push it, which is the first feeling. If you don't have that, then you're really going to struggle. That helped me before qualifying. I had a good FP3 lap on the soft tire, and I felt, I was in the ballpark. I would challenge for Q3. But my most nervous point was on Friday in qualifying, when I was basically driving down the straight, exiting the last corner, starting my first push lap. It's just massive nerves. You have the feeling in your stomach like butterflies, like crazy. But the second I hit the brakes for turn 1, gone. And then you're focusing on delivering and doing the lap.
Well, how quickly after Jeddah did talk of 2025 start?
Talk of 2025 was always on the cards. I think Jeddah accelerated that quite a lot. I already had 6 FP1s in the books with Haas before the season even started. So we knew that was an option and one that we were pushing for heavily. And Jeddah definitely accelerated that. I was focusing on driving F2 and my F1 outings, but my manager, I'm sure, was pushing really hard.
So can you describe the moment when you were told that you got the Haas seat for 25? Where were you? What were you doing? What was said?
Well, in F1, I think until you really put the pen on the paper and sign the contract that seals the deal for your future, nothing is certain, because there were talks about it, and it was, a lot of people were saying it was the worst kept secret in history and stuff like this. But actually for me, I had no idea. I knew that we were in discussion, but I had no idea that it was official until maybe 3 days before it was announced, when I signed the paper. And actually I was at my manager's house, who lives quite close to Silverstone. We were having a barbecue, and he finally got the confirmation that the last little bits had been sorted and that it was confirmed. And it was really special to share that moment with him, because he's been with me since my first year in cars in 2020, and it's been a journey for us. And he's the type of guy that's always there through thick and thin. So it was really special.
What's it like to achieve your life goal, your life ambition, right? From when, what were you, age 16? You left home, you went to live in Italy. This has been the goal ever since then, right?
It was a dream from when I was 5-6 years old. But when I was 15, 16, becoming part of the academy, it wasn't a dream anymore, because it was in touching distance. I knew that if I performed and if I did what I needed to, I could actually get there. When I was 5-6, I said I wanted to be an F1, and everyone was like, yeah, good luck. But yeah, it's been a lot of hard work and sacrifice, not only from me, but also from my family, who have had to, give up a lot of time. And, it's tough for a family to support their kid from karting all the way to F2. And, I'm very happy that it's paid off, and I've achieved the dream of getting to F1, but my dream is not just to get to F1. I want to have longevity in F1 and stay here for as long as possible.
I'm sure Ollie has a long future in Formula One. And it's not only him. I've been astounded at how well all the rookies have performed this year. They've come in with a bang. But the hard yards are ahead of them. Now they need to work harder than ever to ensure they perform week in, week out. Bearman's team principal at Haas is Io Komatsu. This was his first season in charge, and what an impact he's had. Haas finished P7 in the constructors' standings after coming last in 2023. Io came on the podcast to tell the intriguing story of his journey from Tokyo to the F1 paddock, including his father's experiences as a political prisoner in Japan and his own challenges adapting to life in England as a student.
In Japan, we don't have sarcasm, right? My landlady was very sarcastic. So after about 6 weeks, I thought she absolutely hated me. So I went to the language school. I think my landlady hates me, so I think we need to find a new host family. And then school said, agreed, okay, fine. Then we decided to move. Then the day I told her, she was so upset because she actually really liked me. And she was just, later I learned that, okay, that's sarcasm. And she was very clever person. And then she was very articulate in her language, but I had no idea how to understand that bit, of course.
But I think there is a natural bent in your family for languages because I read an article the other day about your dad.
Yes.
And I mean, what an amazing man he must have been, because he was a political prisoner of war. Tell me if I'm wrong. And he learned German whilst in prison. Is that right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
What an extraordinary story. Why did he want to learn German?
Because he was so into Beethoven. You know, Beethoven's life, music resonated to him so much, even when he was a politician. You know, he didn't know anything about music. Again, it was similar to me in the motorsport. He suddenly got into this Beethoven, met Beethoven. I can't remember how, but met Beethoven's music, resonated to him. He wanted to understand more. He was a, let's say, activist against the war. You know, back then, Communist Party was completely illegal. So then he got imprisoned during the war. And then in prison during the war, of course, he's a political prisoner. So he can't read anything political. Then only books he can get was music, right? Because it's not political. But then he wasn't allowed any notebook or pencil. So what he told me was he was given a chalk. So he was just writing chalks on the wall, you know, then rubbing it away, writing it again, rubbing it away. Then that's how he learned German.
Wow. How difficult was your dad's life after the war? I mean, I know you were born in the mid-70s, but was life difficult for him given that he was against the war, Communist Party, Imperial Japan?
I think it was most difficult during the war, of course, because the activity he was doing was illegal and he had a different name. And then somebody wrote a book about him. Then reading that book, it's like, is this really my dad? You know, he had a gun. He was running away from the special police. He was sold by the spy inside the Communist Party. That's why he got arrested, etc. First time I read it, it was like, is this really my dad's story? Because he didn't really talk to me about those, let's say, difficult side. I knew he was a political prisoner. I knew he was against the war. I knew that he didn't trust what the Japanese government was saying. So again, he learned Russian as well. So he realized, okay, what the Japanese government telling him or telling everyone was not right. Then he decided, okay, I should get a bit more information by listening to Russian radio, because he could get a frequency because Russia is close to Japan. So then he learned Russian. Then he listened to Russian radio and trying to get perspective of where the war is going, what Japan's actually doing. So
it's an incredible story. You learning English was always going to happen in terms of...
Yeah, I have to thank my dad for that side of linguistic ability.
Your dad died when you were 19.
Yes.
What would he make of the Io of today?
I'd like to think he's a little bit proud, but then, I wasn't a very good kid, if you like, when I was teenage years. And then before I could kind of like repay his trust, he passed away. So I have a huge regret in many ways how I was when I was 12, 13, 14. And I'm very, very thankful that both my mom and dad supported me to come to England to follow, you know, what I wanted to do. But I didn't show much gratitude or gratefulness back then. Then before I could do that, he passed away. So yeah, so that's a huge regret. But hopefully, yeah, somewhere he's proud.
Before we move on to the final part of the show, a quick word from our sponsor, Masterclass. Struggling with gift ideas? Instead of giving someone something they want this Christmas, what if you could give them the chance to become who they've always wanted to be? Well, you can, with Masterclass. Masterclass is the only streaming platform where you can learn from the absolute best. Over 200 world-class instructors across sports, business, music, cooking, and more. And we're talking about people like Serena Williams, Gordon Ramsay, and even legendary thinkers like Noam Chomsky. For F1 fans, it doesn't get much better than learning from Lewis Hamilton himself. His class is packed with lessons on mental toughness, preparation, and how to stay calm under pressure. Skills that go way beyond racing. And I love how easy it is to take notes and come back to key lessons whenever you need a refresher. It's the kind of insight that any F1 fan, or really anyone looking to level up their mindset, would appreciate. So give your loved ones the gift of learning that lasts a lifetime with Masterclass. They can stream it on their phone, laptop, smart TV, anywhere, anytime. And here's a wild stat for you. 88% of Masterclass members say it's made a positive impact on their lives. Masterclass always has great offers during the holidays, sometimes up to as much as 50% off. So head over to masterclass.com/grid for the current offer. That's up to 50% off at masterclass.com/grid. Masterclass.com/grid. For the first time since 1998, McLaren are world champions after winning the Constructors' Championship. But it wasn't easy. After hunting down early season frontrunners Red Bull, they then had to withstand a late charge from Ferrari, and they won the title by just 14 points. Tom Stallard is Oscar Piastri's race engineer and McLaren's director of human performance. He's also an Olympic silver medal winning rower, so he knows exactly how crucial teamwork has been to their success this season.
There's a great sense of camaraderie or even family within the team. I think that people have a phenomenal amount of trust in the leadership of the team now, and that the leadership of the team genuinely care about the people who work here. So that is very powerful. It makes it a very positive place to work. I mean, to be honest, the good results that are coming at the moment feel like they've been built from that. You know, to some extent, we are, I hesitate to say surprised, but pleased that the results are coming at the rate that they're coming at. We knew we were developing something really powerful and building something really strong in this team. But over the last 18 months or so, then that has really started to build a momentum which now is visible from the outside, where internally it had been creating and building for a couple of years, but we'd not really had the sort of breakthrough that was visible perhaps to the media or the fans.
Are you able to enjoy this moment, or do you as a team live in fear of losing the edge?
I don't think we do. I think at the moment we feel very much like we're still in a developmental phase, that the team is still growing and building, and that the things we've been working on, they're not yet ready. The truth is, the reason why we're, if anything, surprised that these good results are coming is because we feel like there's a lot of good processes that we're still working on and developing. So there's still a lot of opportunity. So if anything, I think we are keen to show the world what we're capable of, because we don't think this is it.
Can we talk about youth now, particularly Oscar Piastri? Does he have what it takes to become world champion?
One of the things people talk about in Formula One is future world champion, which I think is absolute nonsense, because so many stars have to align for that to happen. What you can look at is the rate at which someone's improving. And Oscar is improving at a phenomenal rate and has maintained that rate for nearly 2 seasons now. So at some point in a career, that rate of improvement for most people levels off. I think for everybody previously, that levels off. And so the question is, where does that level off? I would say, you know, at the moment, he's improving at a fantastic rate. I think Lando is a incredibly tough benchmark to be up against as your teammate, or up with as your teammate, probably I should say. And Oscar is doing a good job of keeping Lando honest, let's say. So I think all the while he keeps improving, then the sky's the limit. And absolutely, I think he has what it takes, but it takes an army as well. Like, Formula One is not really an individual sport. And so it relies on him being able to get himself into a place, to build a team around himself, to be part of a team being built around himself to support that. For a driver to be world champion, they also need to be a leader within the team. I think that is an area where he is coping phenomenally well. And his kind of down-to-earth but still humorous attitude is well received in the team. He makes time for people. Oscar has a very personal relationship with the team. He knows a huge number of people in the team by name and knows like personal details about them. So that is quite galvanizing. It makes people support him more than just support him as this is the guy driving for us at the moment. It makes people kind of genuinely get behind him and move heaven and earth to support him. So he's really grown into that. He was good at it on day one, but that's something that's really developed as well.
So when you were a rower, tell us just how fit were you? I mean, were you fitter than Piastri?
Yes, I was.
What was your fitness regime, if you like, was it just on the ergo every single day?
Through the winter, we would train 3 times a day most days. Those sessions were generally 90 minutes to 2 hours long. Normally, if they were in the boat, they'd normally be 20 kilometres. Normally of those, then 2 would be on the water and the other would be a land training session. So that would either be an hour on the rowing machine or probably an hour and a half of weightlifting. The rest days normally would be 1 Sunday per month. Normally the weekend after an event. One of the other things that makes rowing incredibly tough is that you take part in probably 4 competitions a year. So it's a real training sport. Most of the time is just head down, locked away in the pain cave training.
The pain cave.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges of Formula One, is that actually Formula One is a racing sport and they get very little time to train in the car.
And for those people who don't know about rowing, at the Olympics you were in an 8. How important is teamwork when you're in an 8?
To be honest, an 8 is all about teamwork. We have an expression in rowing about an 8 being greater than the sum of its parts, and that being the aim. One of the nice things about rowing is that you can't play your weakest person out of the game. If one person checks out, then it's game over, and 7 will never beat 8. So you're only really as good as your weakest man. To be honest, my favourite bit about rowing was the teamwork and working together. And an outcome of that is that those people have remained incredibly close friends, even nearly 20 years on now.
And does your side of the garage at a Formula One race, do you feel that you are pulling all in the same direction and somehow what you learnt in rowing is being used now in Formula One?
Yeah, I think so. I'd like to think so. I think that building strong teams was one of my strengths in rowing. And I think that generally speaking, that's been the case at McLaren as well. I think that the people I work with generally, touch wood, like working with me. So building that team, I think, is important. I think that goes beyond just side of the garage, though. The garage is pretty unified, and I would be disappointed to learn that was specific to one side of the garage.
And what would it mean for you personally to win the Constructors' title with this team? The first time they would have won it since 1998.
I mean, I've been at the team since 2008, leaving rowing and coming to Formula One. I had a 2-week break in between the Olympics and putting on a suit to join McLaren. And we won the Drivers' Championship that year, but actually it was 2 months after I joined the team. It was almost too soon for me to feel like I was genuinely a part of it. My mood at the time was really happy for my new friends rather than feeling like I had been part of us winning the Drivers' Championship. So this would be the first time that it would feel like it was something that I'd been a big part of creating. I mean, I say a big part, a 1/800th, let's say, of creating. So that will be really special. And there have been periods in that 15-year, 16-year nearly history that I've been in the team where this has looked incredibly far away. And I think particularly from the outside, it's looked incredibly far away. And we've been into qualifying sessions where the dream was to try and get one car out of Q1. As a team, we've kind of stayed together through all that and fought through all that, and things have developed and improved, and we've picked up momentum. And so it would feel incredibly special if we can deliver that.
While McLaren dethrone Red Bull, no one could take Max Verstappen's crown. In a season of twists and turns, both on and off track, and despite having the third fastest car for much of the year, Verstappen still came out on top to become a 4-time world champion. Red Bull Racing's chief engineer Paul Moynihan explained to me why Max is a class above the rest.
He is able to put the car on the limit throughout the corner, is my interpretation of things. So some arrive at the corner and find the peak and then have to undershoot to get around the corner in moderate terms, because they're all pretty quick, aren't they? He's able to find the limit, overstep it by a tiny amount, undershoot by a tiny amount, and extract it that way. His resolution when he's doing a debrief is mighty impressive. You think it's all happening in slow motion, but these things are silly fast, aren't they? And he just breaks it down almost into sort of little sections of the corner. So his resolution of driving is quite phenomenal.
You've worked with him since he's been at Red Bull, since he came and won that first race, of course, back in 2016 in Spain. How has he evolved during the time you've known him?
I remember that first race quite clearly. That was the one where Nico and Lewis bumped into one another between turn 3 and 4. And you sort of watch that evolve and you think, oh my goodness me, this could be fortunate. Right, missed the debris. All right, we're underway now. Here we go. My impressions of that first race, what a cool customer. Goodness me. No pressure phased him, did it? I think he had Kimi breathing down his neck in the last few races, or the last few laps, sorry. If I recall correctly, he was just using the overtake to keep the K deployment going down the straights and then topping the battery up elsewhere around the lap. Mighty impressive for his first race with us. You began to see underneath that sort of quite relaxed exterior is a phenomenal inner strength. There's a sort of mythical armour, if you like. Not much is going to derail him. His confidence has built. He's, I think, driving with a great deal more assuredness now than, say, 21. Yeah, we got tangled up with Lewis a few times, didn't we? Now, nothing much phases him, does it? So I suppose the evolution you're asking about has gone from someone who had an expectation, a belief and a confidence to someone who has realised that expectation and is now one of the very best we'll see, I suspect.
Okay, can I ask you to pick a best win for Max? I mean, as an observer looking from the outside in, I thought Imola 2024 looked spectacular from his point of view. Does anything top that in your mind?
I was trying to think that there are races where he has passed people to win and there are races he's defended. So your example of Imola is phenomenal. I would take you back to Miami 23. He spun on his first Q lap in qualifying 3, or went off. He won't say spin, he doesn't. Something went wrong. It was clearly not his fault, it was our fault. We let him down somewhere. And then, if I recall correctly, Charles caused a red flag in the second run of Q3. Checo was on pole. Max was P9. By lap 15, he's sitting in Checo's boot or something like that, isn't he? That, I thought, was a pretty assured drive. So he passed a few people, looked after his tyres, caught his teammate, who was driving well, stuck it on pole in Miami, and made it look quite straightforward, didn't he? I thought that, for a race where he had to pass people, look after tyres and all sorts, was pretty incredible. If you look at Spa 22, he was gone, wasn't he? Absolutely gone. And he didn't put a foot wrong. He could have just lost his concentration. No, he doesn't lose his concentration.
Is he talkative on the radio? Does he have that spare capacity to think about everything going on in the race as well as what he's doing?
I refer you to Spain 22 when the DRS wouldn't open reliably. Go and have a listen to that radio. Goodness me, you can speak on the radio, okay. The capacity's there, don't you worry about that. Yes, he will offer you an insight into what is going on, regardless of the situation.
And Paul, in terms of his qualifying, there's one lap, almost lap, that I wanted to ask you about, and that is Saudi Arabia 21. Do you remember? He was on fire and then just kissed the wall on the exit of the last corner.
Yes, I remember that. Vivid worry of what on earth do we do with the gearbox?
But up until that moment of contact, was that the finest qualifying almost lap that you'd ever seen?
Max has had some pretty phenomenal laps. If he was sat here, he might have a different view of what's his finest qualifying lap. Up to the point he hit the wall, it doesn't
were you
really
enjoying it?
It doesn't really matter,
No, I
does
knew
it?
you were going to say that, but were you enjoying it up until the moment he hit the wall?
Oh, of course you are. He's
Yeah.
set 2 pinks, hadn't he? Pink and green, something like that. So I think he was 3/10 up coming out that last corner. You think, come on, keep it together. Boom. Oh, no. Now what do we do?
The car looked like it was dancing around the lap, I remember thinking.
Until it pirouetted into the wall, I suppose. Well, it didn't pirouette, did it? He's a phenomenal talent, isn't he, Max? And there's no doubt about it. And Max tends to put himself in a situation where he gets what he wants out of a race. Zandvoort last year, wet, dry. Who comes out 1 and 2? Wasn't it Max and Fernando? Everybody else is in walls and gravel and all sorts. And those two emerge.
I chatted to Paul at Silverstone in the middle of the year. So given how much he enjoyed Miami 2023, if I asked him now what Max's best drive has been, I think he might pick that title-defining masterclass in Brazil, where he won from P17 on the grid. That's it for the best of F1 Beyond the Grid in 2024. Thanks so much to everyone who's come on the show this season. It's been fascinating to hear your stories and your insights. And thank you to all of you who have listened. We love sharing these interviews with you and reading your comments. And before I go, I'd like to thank the show's producers, Chris Browning-Brandt and Jamie Smith at F1, and Karen Bevan, who's worked on the show since our very first episode in 2018 at Audioboom. And new for this year, we brought the show to F1's YouTube channel, so huge thanks to Emma Mills, Dwayne Blee, Africa Rosaleni, and Jamie Wenban for their help with that. And there's so much to look forward to in 2025. We've got the F1 75 live season launch event in London in February, when we'll see Lewis Hamilton in Ferrari red for the first time. And there's sure to be an epic fight for the title, with 3 or 4 teams in contention. And I said 2024 felt like a movie, but we've actually got F1 starring Brad Pitt coming out next summer, so that's going to be very special. We'll be back again at the start of 2025 with more amazing guests from the world of Formula One. In the meantime, why not go back and listen to all of our interviews in full? There are links to the episodes in the description for all the guests featured in this show, or just find F1 Beyond the Grid on your app and scroll down to see all our episodes from the past 7 years. You can also check out F1's other official podcasts. F1 Nation will be back next year for race previews and race reviews. And you can get your questions answered by F1 experts on F1 Explains. And to stay up to date with all the latest news during the winter break, go to f1.com, the official F1 app, and follow @F1 on social media. As ever, thank you for listening. F1 Beyond the Grid is produced by Formula One and Audioboom Studios. Wishing you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and until the new season, keep it flat out.